The Vrelneth ships appeared in Earth's sky on a Tuesday morning in 2247. They were massive, blocking out the sun over major cities across 6 continents. Within hours, the aliens broadcast their message in every human language. The message was simple and had been delivered to 347 other species before humanity. Surrender your children, or we will take them by force. The Vrelneth explained their system with cold efficiency. They would take children between the ages of 5 and 12. These children would be raised in Vrelneth facilities, educated in Dominion ways, and trained to serve the Empire. It was an honor, they said. The children would become part of something greater than their primitive species could ever achieve alone. Every government on Earth gave the same answer. No doubt the Vrelneth found this amusing. They had expected resistance, of course. Young species always resisted at first. It made the eventual surrender more satisfying. They sent down their harvester ships to 12 major cities, protected by military escorts. The ships landed in public spaces, and soldiers emerged wearing armor that could withstand anything Earth's militaries could throw at them. The Battle of Snow Paulo lasted 4 hours. Human forces threw everything they had at the Vrelneth ground troops. Fighter jets screamed overhead. Tanks rolled through the streets. Soldiers fought building by building, trying to stop the aliens from reaching the residential districts. They failed. The Vrelneth technology was centuries ahead of Earth's. Their shields absorbed bullets and missiles. Their weapons turned buildings to ashdod when the harvester ship lifted off. It carried 4,218 children in its hold. Parents ran after the ship, screaming names into the sky until their voices gave out. The Vrelneth recorded everything. They would use the footage later to convince other cities to surrender without a fight. The First Contact War lasted 6 months. The Vrelneth never deployed their full military might. They didn't need to. They sent just enough ships to demonstrate the futility of resistance. They raided cities across the globe, taking children in carefully orchestrated operations designed to break human morale. Earth's militaries learned quickly that they couldn't win conventional battles against Vrelneth technology, so they tried everything else. Guerrilla tactics, cyber warfare, suicide attacks, nuclear weapons. Nothing worked. The Vrelneth had seen it all before, from species far more advanced than humanity. They had protocols for every type of resistance. Their shields could stop nuclear blasts. Their sensors could detect ambush. Their artificial intelligence could counter any virus human programmers could write. By the time the war ended, the Vrelneth had successfully raided 47 cities and taken 40,000 children to their processing station on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. They had also destroyed 16 cities completely as demonstrations. The message was clear: surrender or watch your world burn. Earth's governments met in secret, in bunkers deep underground. The debate lasted 3 days. Some leaders wanted to fight to the last human. Others argued that surrender was the only way to save the species from extinction. In the end, pragmatism won. Earth signed the submission accord. The terms were brutal. Earth would provide the Vrelneth with access to 200,000 children over the next 20 years. The children would be selected by lottery to ensure fairness across all nations and social classes. Earth would not resist. Earth would not hide children. Earth would comply or face total annihilation. The Vrelneth established occupation zones in major cities. Their soldiers walked Earth's streets openly, confident in their superiority. Every 6 months, new harvester ships arrived to collect the next group of children. The lottery was held publicly, broadcast across every screen on the planet. When a child's name was called, they had 24 hours to report to the collection centers. Most families complied. What choice did they have? The Vrelneth had made examples of families who tried to hide their children. Entire neighborhoods were leveled. The message was always the same: obey, or everyone suffers. But something was happening beneath the surface, something the Vrelnath didn't notice. Humans were recording everything. Every child taken had their name, photograph, and family information stored in encrypted databases. Secret networks formed, connecting parents who had lost children. They shared information, tracking the movement of Vrelnath ships, trying to figure out where the children were being taken. The Vrelnath had seen resistance movements before. Every subjugated species went through this phase. Small acts of defiance, secret gatherings, whispered plans. It never amounted to anything. Give them a generation, and the resistance would fade. The children raised in Dominion facilities would return as loyal soldiers, and the conquered species would accept their place in the Empire. 18 years passed. The Vrelnath took 2.3 million human children in total. The youngest of the first group were now 23 years old. The Vrelnath proudly displayed their success to the galaxy. Human soldiers, wearing Dominion armor, led assault forces against other species. They were efficient, ruthless, and completely loyal to their Vrelnath commanders. On Earth, the occupation seemed stable. Resistance movements had been crushed dozens of times. Humanity appeared broken, just like every other species before them. The Vrelnath reduced their garrison forces, confident that Earth no longer posed a threat. They didn't know about the secret factories built in abandoned mines. They didn't know about the hidden research facilities reverse engineering captured Vrelnath technology. They didn't know about the millions of humans training in underground bases. They didn't know about the agents who had infiltrated Dominion space, disguised as traders and slaves. Most importantly, they didn't know about Operation Remember. In a bunker beneath the ruins of Geneva, Earth's shadow government prepared to activate a plan 18 years in the making. They had every name. They had every location. And they had spent nearly 2 decades building the capability to take back what was stolen. The Vrelnath had taught humanity an important lesson. Sometimes, the most dangerous weapon isn't superior technology or greater numbers. Sometimes it's patience. The signal went out on a Tuesday, exactly 19 years after the first Vrelnath ship appeared in Earth's sky. Humans appreciated symmetry. Across Dominion space, on 12,000 occupied worlds and 300 military installations, human agents received a simple message. 3 words in code. Remember them all. The Vrelnath Dominion's greatest strength was also its critical weakness. Their empire stretched across 2 galaxies, controlling billions of subjects. Managing such vastness required perfect communication. The Dominion relied on quantum communication hubs, devices that allowed instant messaging across any distance. These hubs were guarded, of course, but guards could be bribed, tricked, or replaced. Over 18 years, human agents had infiltrated every level of Dominion society. Some posed as members of other subjugated species, taking advantage of the Vrelnath's inability to distinguish between the conquered races they considered beneath them. Others had allowed themselves to be captured and enslaved, working their way into positions of trust through years of perfect obedience. Dmitry Volkov had spent 16 years as a maintenance worker on Hub Station 7, cleaning floors and repairing ventilation systems. The Vrelnath guards never learned his real name. They called him 17, his slave designation. Dmitry smiled and nodded and fixed their broken equipment. At night, he studied the hub systems, memorizing every circuit and protocol. Amara Chun worked as an administrative clerk in the Dominion's military logistics division. She processed supply requests and filed reports, a job so boring that her Vrelnath supervisors rarely spoke to her. Over 12 years, she built a complete database of Dominion fleet movements, ship capabilities, and supply chain vulnerabilities. There were thousands more like them. mechanics who serviced Vrelnath warships, translators who sat in on military briefings, servants in the homes of Dominion officials. They lived their covers perfectly, never deviating from their roles, never taking unnecessary risks. Many died maintaining their disguises. Disease, accidents, and random violence killed nearly 30% of the infiltrators. None of them broke cover, even when dying. When the signal came, they activated simultaneously. Dmitri disabled the security systems on Hub Station 7 and uploaded a virus into the quantum network that he had been carrying on a microscopic implant for 5 years. Amara sent falsified reports to Dominion Military Command, redirecting ships away from strategic locations. Across Dominion space, human agents seized control of communication hubs or sabotaged them beyond quick repair. For 47 minutes, the Vrelnath Dominion went dark. Their military commanders couldn't communicate with their fleets. Garrison forces on occupied worlds couldn't call for reinforcements. The empire that had ruled through perfect coordination suddenly found itself blind and deaf. The second phase of Operation Remember began exactly 12 minutes into the communications blackout. The stolen children, now adults serving in Dominion military forces, started receiving messages on hijacked Vrelnath channels. The messages came with encryption keys that matched their genetic signatures, making them impossible to ignore or block. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, commander of a Vrelnath assault battalion, stared at the holographic display in his quarters. The message showed a photograph of two people he didn't recognize. Below the image, text appeared. "These are your parents. Your real name is Marcus James Webb. You were taken from Austin, Texas on March 15th, 2249. You were 7 years old. You liked dinosaurs and wanted to be a paleontologist." Marcus deleted the message. His indoctrination was strong. The Vrelnath had raised him, trained him, given him purpose. Earth was just a primitive world that had resisted Dominion superiority. He knew his duty. The next message came an hour later. This one contained a video. A woman with his eyes stood in a bedroom that looked frozen in time. Posters of dinosaurs covered the walls. The woman spoke directly to the camera. "Marcus, if you're watching this, we never stopped looking for you. We never stopped hoping. Your room is exactly as you left it. We're waiting for you to come home." Marcus deleted that message too, but he didn't forget the woman's face. Over the following days, more messages came. They contained details that the Vrelnath shouldn't have known. His childhood fears, his favorite foods, the name of the stuffed animal he slept with. Each message was precisely crafted, designed by Earth's best psychologists to bypass Vrelnath conditioning. 70% of the stolen children ignored or reported the messages. Their indoctrination held, but 30% started to question, started to remember fragments of lives they thought were just dreams, started to wonder if the Vrelnath had lied about everything. On Earth, the population received their own signal. Sirens wailed across every city, but not in warning. In celebration, hidden doors opened across the planet, revealing facilities that shouldn't exist. From underground hangars, ships rose into the sky. Not the primitive vessels the Vrelnath had destroyed 19 years ago. These were modern warships, built using captured and improved Dominion technology. The fleet that lifted off from Earth numbered 8,000 ships. They had been built in secret, assembled in caverns and underwater facilities, kept hidden through elaborate deception. The Vrelnath occupation forces had never suspected, had never looked closely at the conquered species they assumed was broken. Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the flagship Remembrance, watching Earth shrink in the viewscreen. Around her, the fleet formed into attack formations, each group assigned to a specific target. They weren't heading to the Vrelnath homeworld. Not yet. First, they would retrieve what was stolen. The communication blackout ended after 47 minutes. Realmeth technicians restored partial network connectivity, establishing basic command channels. But the damage was done. By the time Dominion Military Command understood what was happening, human fleets were already entering slipspace, heading toward every known location where human children served or were held. The Realmeth High Command met in emergency session. They had faced rebellions before, but nothing like this. The humans had somehow built a military fleet in secret, infiltrated their empire, and compromised their communications, all while appearing to be conquered and compliant. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Realmeth felt something they had inflicted on countless other species. They felt fear. The Battle of Epsilon Station lasted 3 hours and 17 minutes. The station orbited a gas giant in the Realmeth's outer territories, home to a training facility where 8,000 human children learned to serve the Dominion. The Realmeth garrison included 2 battleships, 15 cruisers, and the station's own formidable defenses. On paper, they should have easily repelled the attacking human fleet, but humanity didn't fight like the species the Realmeth were used to facing. The human ships came out of slipspace broadcasting on every frequency, transmitting detailed evidence of Realmeth crimes in the Dominion's own languages. Other subjugated species monitoring the channels heard the messages. For the first time, they learned that the mighty Realmeth could be fought, could be hurt, could bleed. The battle itself was efficient and brutal. Human ships used weapons the Realmeth had never seen before, modifications of their own technology that shouldn't have been possible. Missiles that could predict and counter Realmeth shield harmonics. Energy weapons that punched through armor rated to withstand anything in the Dominion arsenal. Cyber warfare that turned the station's own defenses against its garrison. But the most shocking aspect wasn't the technology. It was the tactics. Human ships accepted damage that any other species would have avoided. They rammed Realmeth cruisers when weapons failed. They used suicide runs to create openings for other ships. Captains made decisions that sacrificed their own vessels to ensure the mission succeeded. Commander Thelson, the Realmeth station commander, watched in horror as a human destroyer, its hull breached in atmosphere venting, deliberately crashed into his flagship's bridge. The destroyer's captain transmitted a final message before impact. The child in room 347 is named Amanda. Tell her we're coming. When the battle ended, every Realmeth ship was destroyed or disabled. The station's garrison had 2 choices: surrender, or the humans would tear the station apart room by room. They surrendered. Human soldiers, wearing armor marked with names and photographs, swept through the facility. They moved with precision, guided by intelligence from the infiltrators, and from the 30% of stolen children who had turned against their Realmeth handlers. The reunion rooms on the human ships were designed by grief counselors and psychologists. When the children came aboard, many didn't remember Earth. Some fought their rescuers, loyal to their Realmeth training. Others stood in shock, unable to process what was happening. A few, the youngest when taken, remembered nothing of their old lives at all. Sarah Chun walked through one of the reunion rooms, watching families meet children who had grown into strangers. A mother held her son, now a young man who barely remembered her language. An elderly father showed photographs to a daughter who couldn't recognize herself in them. The scenes were heartbreaking, but they were also the point. Across Dominion space, 17 similar battles occurred simultaneously. Human fleets struck at harvesting stations, training facilities, and military bases where stolen children served. The coordination was perfect, exploiting the communication blackout and the confusion of facing a threat the Realmeth had never anticipated. At the harvesting station 3, the Realmeth commander tried to use the children as hostages, threatening to execute them if the human fleet didn't retreat. The human response came from Admiral Marcus Webb, the same officer who had received messages about dinosaurs and a room waiting for him. Marcus had turned, had remembered, and had brought his entire battalion with him. His reply was broadcast on all channels. "You taught us that nothing is more important than orders. You taught us to accept any sacrifice for the mission. Execute them, and we will still come. We will take this station. We will recover their bodies. And then we will teach you what sacrifice really means." The Vrelnath commander surrendered. He had seen enough of human tactics to believe the threat. Within 6 months, humanity had struck at every known location holding stolen children. They didn't stop there. Human fleets pushed deeper into Dominion space, targeting child harvesting operations for all species. On 47 worlds, human soldiers liberated Vrelnath processing centers and returned children to the Solari, the Korthan, the Vexil, and dozens of other species. The galaxy watched in amazement. The humans weren't just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for everyone the Vrelnath had victimized. Each liberation was broadcast across Dominion channels, showing that resistance was possible, that the mighty Dominion could be beaten. 3 subjugated species launched their own rebellions, inspired by humanity's example. The Vrelnath military, already stretched thin by human attacks, found themselves fighting on multiple fronts. Their communication networks, still compromised by human cyber warfare, couldn't coordinate an effective response. The empire that had stood for 3,000 years began to fracture. The Vrelnath High Command finally understood the scope of their miscalculation. They had assumed humanity would follow the pattern of every other conquered species. Resist, be crushed, accept subjugation, eventually integrate into the empire. But humans had done something no species had attempted before. They had waited, planned, infiltrated. And when they struck at the foundation of everything the Dominion represented. The High Command sent a communication to Earth, requesting negotiations. The human representative who responded was Ambassador Liu Chun, mother of 2 children taken in the first harvests. Her message was brief and delivered in perfect Vrelnath, a language she had spent 18 years learning. "You taught the galaxy that taking children was acceptable. You built an empire on stolen generations. Now we're going to teach you something different. We're going to teach you consequences." The Vrelnath expected demands for territory, for tribute, for the usual spoils of war. Instead, Earth's military began assembling the largest fleet the galaxy had ever seen. Ships from 15 liberated species joined them, all heading toward a single destination: the Vrelnath homeworld. The Dominion's final military reserves pulled back, forming a defensive perimeter around their home system. They had enough firepower to make any invasion costly beyond imagination. They prepared for orbital bombardment, for the extinction-level assault that typically ended such conflicts. They didn't understand humans at all. The combined fleet arrived in Vrelnath home system with 3 million ships, the largest armada ever assembled in galactic history. The Vrelnath's remaining military forces, over 500,000 warships, formed defensive positions around their homeworld. Both sides possessed enough firepower to reduce planets to asteroids. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for the apocalyptic battle that would determine the future of known space. It never came. The human fleet broadcast a single message across all frequencies. The voice belonged to Admiral Sarah Chun, but she spoke for Earth's entire shadow government. "We demand the return of every child ever taken from every species with complete documentation. You have 72 hours. The Vrelnath High Command met in their central fortress, surrounded by their most powerful military leaders. They analyzed the human fleet's positions, calculating odds and strategies. The humans had superior numbers, but the Vrelnath possessed their homeworld's orbital defenses and intimate knowledge of their own system. If it came to battle, the Vrelnath would lose, but they could make humanity pay an unbearable price. Archon Vomuth, leader of the High Command, composed his response carefully. You cannot possibly enforce such a demand. Many of the children taken centuries ago are dead. Others have integrated fully into Dominion society. You asked for the impossible. Sarah's reply came within minutes. Then, I suggest you start with the possible. 72 hours. The Vrelnath refused. They had never surrendered to demands from conquered species. Their entire civilization was built on the principle of absolute dominance. To comply would destroy everything they represented. They called humanity's bluff, preparing for the orbital bombardment they were certain would come. 72 hours passed. The human fleet moved, but not toward the Vrelnath military forces. Landing craft, millions of them, descended through the atmosphere. The Vrelnath military prepared to engage, but hesitated when the ships avoided all military installations, government buildings, and industrial centers. The landing craft were heading toward residential districts. What followed was the largest coordinated ground operation in galactic history. Human soldiers, supported by troops from liberated species, deployed across the Vrelnath homeworld with a single mission. They were locating and extracting every Vrelnath child under the age of 16. The operation was a mirror of what the Vrelnath had done to hundreds of other species, but executed with terrifying efficiency. Human forces had spent 2 decades planning how to protect Earth's children from exactly this kind of raid. Now they used that planning in reverse, optimized for a planet they had thoroughly mapped and studied. Teams moved through cities with surgical precision. They had detailed records of every Vrelnath family with children, compiled over years by human intelligence operatives. When they found children, they documented everything: names, ages, family information. The children were treated gently, given medical care, and transported to secure facilities on the human fleet's support ships. The Vrelnath military faced an impossible decision. If they attacked the human ground forces, they would kill their own children in the crossfire. If they did nothing, humanity would take an entire generation. Parents across the planet armed themselves, trying to protect their families, but human soldiers were prepared for this too. They used non-lethal weapons, accepting casualties rather than harm Vrelnath children. In the fortress, Archon Velmoth watched the tactical displays in growing horror. The humans weren't conquering the Vrelnath homeworld. They were doing something far worse. They were teaching the Vrelnath exactly what it felt like to have your children stolen. The operation took 6 days. When it ended, every Vrelnath child had been documented and removed to secure facilities. Not a single child was harmed. The evidence was exhaustive, recorded from every angle, broadcast across the galaxy. Humanity wanted everyone to see that this was being done carefully, methodically, and humanely. Then Sarah broadcast her final message. When every stolen child from every species is returned and accounted for, we will return your children unharmed. We have records going back 800 years. Start with the most recent and work backward. We'll wait. The galaxy watched as the mighty Vrelnath Dominion faced a choice they had forced on countless others: their empire or their future. Within 3 days, the High Command agreed to Earth's demands. The return process took 14 months. Vrelnath ships traveled to hundreds of worlds, retrieving records and individuals. Many of the stolen children were adults now, with lives and families in Dominion space. Some chose to return to their homeworlds. Others didn't remember their original families or had built new lives. Some were dead, their names added to humanity's growing memorial lists. Earth kept detailed records of everything. Every child returned, every child confirmed dead, every species affected. The accounting was precise and public, broadcast across the galaxy. When the Vrelnath tried to falsify records or hide information, human intelligence operatives provided proof. and the return schedule was delayed until accurate information was provided. The stolen children who returned to their homeworlds faced difficult reunions. Languages forgotten, cultures that felt alien, families who had grieved and moved on. Humanity provided counseling services and support networks. Having learned through their own experiences how complex these reunions could be true to their word. When the last documented child was returned, humanity released the Vrelnath children. But each child had spent over a year in human facilities, educated about the full history of what their species had done. They learned about the 800 years of child harvesting. They saw the faces and heard the stories of families torn apart. They understood exactly what their civilization had been built upon. The children returned to a homeworld that barely recognized them. They spoke of concepts their parents found uncomfortable: accountability, justice, the rights of conquered species. The Vrelnath had expected their children to return unchanged. Instead, they came back with questions that their civilization couldn't easily answer. The Dominion's empire collapsed within 5 years. Without the threat of child harvesting, dozens of species declared independence. The Vrelnath military, forbidden by treaty from rebuilding to its former strength, couldn't stop them. The 3,000-year-old empire fragmented into isolated systems, with the Vrelnath homeworld becoming just another minor power. Earth established the Remembrance Coalition, a defensive alliance specifically designed to prevent child harvesting. Humanity took the role of enforcers, but operated under strict oversight from member species. They built monuments on liberated worlds, each one containing the names of every child taken from that planet. The monuments were impossible to ignore, standing as permanent reminders of what had been done and what had been stopped. 10 years after the operation began, former Vrelnath worlds had found new paths. Some prospered. Others struggled with the transition from imperial subjects to independent peoples. The Vrelnath homeworld remained silent, its population diminished, its military disbanded, its future uncertain. In the central square of the Vrelnath capital, humanity built a monument. It listed every species the Vrelnath had harvested from, every child documented as taken. The monument's inscription was simple, written in thousands of languages. We are humanity. We remember. We do not forgive, but we do not become what we fought. A young Vrelnath woman named Selana stood before the monument on a cold morning. She had been 3 years old when the humans came, too young to remember much of her time on their ships. But she had been educated there, had learned the history her parents' generation preferred not to discuss. She carried flowers, a ritual her generation had adopted. An apology in the only form they could offer. Across the plaza, an old human veteran noticed her. His uniform was weathered, his face scarred from battles fought decades ago. He had been part of the ground teams that extracted Vrelnath children, had spent weeks ensuring they were safe and cared for. He nodded to Selana. She nodded back. No words were exchanged. The silence said everything that needed to be said. The Vrelnath had taught the galaxy that power meant taking what you wanted. Humanity taught them something different. That the strongest weapon wasn't superior technology or overwhelming force. It was remembering, and making sure that everyone else remembered too. The flowers lay at the monument's base, joining thousands of others. Above them, the names of the lost stretched toward the sky, a roll call of suffering that would never be erased. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Some species learned through wisdom. Others learned through pain. The Vrelnath had learned through both and humanity made certain they would never forget.